Are you really not going to sign? Her voice was sharp, filled with disbelief and anger. She held the birth certificate in her trembling hands, her eyes pleading with me to reconsider. But I wouldn't. The child she carried wasn't mine. The life we had built over 8 years crumbled the moment I discovered the truth. The betrayal, the lies, the secret meetings in hotel rooms, everything had led to this moment. This isn't just a story about infidelity. This is the journey of a man who uncovered a web of deception, a marriage shattered by betrayal, and the difficult choice between clinging to the past or forging a new future. Join Pam Pam as we dive into this emotional story, and don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts. My unfaithful wife erupted in anger when I declined to sign the birth certificate for the child resulting from her infidelity. For 8 years, I have shared my life with my 31-year-old wife, and we have yet to welcome children into our world. 2 years ago, she embarked on a new professional journey and has thrived remarkably. At first, she spoke of a colleague she held in disdain, referring to him as an a-hole. Yet as time passed, her demeanor towards him began to warm, and she ceased to speak of him as frequently. There seemed to be no cause for concern, even in the midst of our flawed union. My trust in her has been unwavering, and our relationship has typically been harmonious. Fast forward to roughly a month ago, I began to observe some changes. She started to text with increasing regularity, ensuring her phone was always within reach. Her evenings and weekends unexpectedly filled with activity. She became increasingly aloof, shying away from any display of affection. Moreover, she began to fabricate stories about peculiar matters. The ultimate deception unfolded as she prepared for a business trip, selecting a swimsuit far more revealing than any she had donned in the past. Upon my inquiry, she asserted that she had ordered it online, a statement that was untrue, and concluded that it was not appropriate for a work trip to Florida. Nevertheless, she brought it with her on the journey. In her absence, I took it upon myself to delve into the matter. Throughout our entire relationship, I had never once invaded my wife's privacy, yet the relentless dishonesty had worn me down. Within her work bag, I stumbled upon a whimsical caricature of her sketched on hotel stationery. Beside it lay a post-it note, inscribed with directions to her male colleague's residence, penned in her own handwriting. An examination of our bank statements uncovered multiple occasions where she asserted her presence at work, yet was in reality enjoying meals at different restaurants throughout the city. This inspired me to delve deeper. As a seasoned private investigator, I find no hesitation in encroaching upon privacy when confronted with significant suspicion. I have installed a GPS tracker in her car, which is registered under my name according to state law. Upon her return from the trip, she recounted her visit to a coffee shop and the errands she undertook on a Sunday. Yet her vehicle remained far from a Chipotle. Upon her return home, she held a Chipotle cup in her hand, a clear indication that she had dined there. On the subsequent Tuesday, she mentioned that she would be attending a company dinner and staying late at work. The GPS data indicated that she departed from work at 3:20 p.m. and lingered at the restaurant until 9 p.m. On the following Saturday, a significant issue arose. We had planned to watch my niece compete in tennis at 8 a.m. She expressed a desire to drive solo, allowing her to depart from the tennis venue and head to a coffee shop for work following the match. She mentioned her intention to visit X coffee shop and shared some thoughts on her reasons for choosing that particular place. I uttered a polite farewell, wishing them a good day before making my way to the car. With the GPS guiding my way, I observed her making a beeline for a Comfort Inn motel. Upon arriving at the Comfort Inn, I settled into a nearby parking lot, biding my time until I could confirm she had entered the building, safely away from her vehicle. I reached out to her from the lobby, inquiring about the ambiance of X coffee shop. She remarked that it was good and inquired about my curiosity. I merely requested that you come down here so we can have a conversation. As she descended, she remarked, "It's not what you believe. He must do this because he has been discovered with other girls in the past." I inquired about her meaning, and she replied that he consistently operates from hotel rooms. She claimed they hadn't engaged in anything physical, and in that moment I instructed her to leave my car. After I departed, she inundated me with 50 calls. At last I responded, declaring that if she uttered even a single falsehood, I would end the call. She confessed that they shared a kiss once, approximately 5 months prior, but insisted it was a mistake and held no significance. She repeatedly insisted that they were merely engaged in work. I inquired about the number of occasions she had encountered him in hotels, and she replied that it had been approximately 10 times over the past 9 months. Curiosity led me to inquire about her activities that Tuesday, and in response she became quite defensive. She mentioned that she had been at work throughout the day, only to attend a work dinner later on. I expressed my belief that she was being dishonest and ended the call abruptly. As I was loading my belongings and my dog into the car, she arrived at our house. She lingered in the driveway, steadfast in her resolve to remain until we engaged in conversation. She wept, her voice trembling as she uttered apologies, clearly distressed. On that day I departed, and now a month has passed. Since that time we have convened on several occasions for her to elucidate matters. Yet whenever I pose my inquiries, she becomes agitated, defensive, and asserts that responding is not beneficial for us. She has deceived me over trivial matters, and when I confront her, she claims I am cornering her. She insists that it wasn't a romantic involvement. She asserts they were merely good friends, and he was assisting her with her work. Their conversations took a turn for the inappropriate, delving into our issues. She admitted to reaching out to him via text and subsequently erasing the messages, claiming they lacked romance, yet could be interpreted as flirtatious. She mentioned that he provided support for her struggles with depression in her professional life. I yearned to place my trust in her, perhaps driven by love or a fear of confronting the truth. I find myself ensnared in the pursuit of truth. Yet even if I uncover it, I cannot fathom how to move beyond the knowledge I already possess. Am I losing my grip? It has been a month since the pivotal day. Last night I engaged in conversation with her. Here's the latest revelation. I asked her about her conversations with the man over the past month. She remarked that he remains oblivious to my encounter at the D-Day Hotel. She has chosen not to broach the subject with him, considering it a matter of marriage that does not concern him. I inquired about the possibility of ceasing non-work conversations with him. She asserted that she is reducing her commitments. That phrase ignited a spark within me. She thinks it's necessary to ease off rather than cut ties completely, as he remains oblivious to my discovery of her actions. She then told a small untruth about an inconsequential detail. I confronted her, completely convinced of her deceit. She passionately refuted it, steadfast in her resolve. I released it, allowing it to join the pile of unanswered dilemmas. Once she asserted that she was reducing her social interactions with the other man, I discreetly placed a voice recorder in my home and made my exit. Last night, I reviewed the recordings and discovered that my wife and this man engaged in conversation for more than an hour across at least 2 calls. The recording ceased in the afternoon, leading me to believe their conversation continued into the evening. While the details eluded me, a handful of damning comments reached my ears. They deliberated on the state of our marriage, a matter she asserted he was entirely unaware of. They engaged in a conversation about employing a clandestine phone application to elude detection. She hurled an insult my way for my tardiness at breakfast. They engaged in lively conversation, sharing laughter over a myriad of subjects. It has been ages since I last witnessed my wife's joy resonate with such exuberance, reminiscent of our early days together. I faced her, and she confessed to certain truths while refuting the others. I have reached a point where my concern has faded away. This morning I have an appointment with a divorce lawyer. For the last 2 weeks I have had no contact with my partner. Not long ago she sent a message, hoping to engage in a dialogue. I replied, making it clear that for any conversation to take place, she would need to be completely honest about everything beforehand. She claimed to be aware of a non-existent wiretap on her phone. Yet I allowed her to maintain that belief, asserting that I was already in the know about everything. I was determined to hear the truth straight from her lips. At last, she conceded, willing to take a seat and share all that was on her mind. During her visit, she admitted that her connection with another man had been deeply intimate, lasting for the past 6 months. She confessed to reserving a hotel room the day before our anniversary for their secret meeting. She further affirmed that she has maintained communication with him following the discovery, asserting that he has been instrumental in helping her navigate my inquiries. She declared that the affair was truly over, and conveyed a longing to restore our marriage. This revelation emerged 6 agonizing weeks after I discovered her in the hotel. I have a feeling that her confession only surfaced because of my relentless questioning, yet she insists that she always meant to be honest, hoping to lessen the pain for us both. The toll taken over those 6 weeks seems beyond repair. We ultimately decided to part ways through divorce. After careful consideration, I find myself regretting the time I spent deliberating over that decision. My former spouse expressed a desire to maintain our union, yet the motivations behind her wish remained a mystery to me. Yet her persistent deceit and manipulation rendered any hope for reconciliation utterly unattainable. The journey through divorce has emerged as the most formidable challenge I have ever faced. Throughout my marriage, I devoted myself entirely. I may not have been flawless, yet my love for my wife was profound, and I dreamed of a lifetime spent together. I was prepared to go to great lengths to ensure her happiness, and I truly believe I exerted considerable effort on numerous occasions. Having stepped back from that relationship, I now perceive it for what it genuinely was: a narcissistic individual siphoning the energy and kindness from someone who truly cared. The union appeared utterly imbalanced, with one individual pouring forth all their devotion, while the other seemed to extract far beyond what could ever be offered. As the days wore on, I found myself grappling with the unsettling notion that I was a partner of little value. She cast shadows over my profession, my character, and my very appearance. Since the divorce, my business has flourished, and I found myself dating women I once believed were beyond my reach. Once I believed myself to be lacking in appeal, a notion partly shaped by the words of my ex-wife. Yet in a surprising turn of events, I now find myself the object of admiration from stunning younger women who approach me in bars. I have experienced a handful of remarkable connections with extraordinary women. The conclusion of these relationships was marked by a sense of understanding, stemming from compatibility challenges. Yet they illuminated the stark reality of my ex-wife's shortcomings as a partner. I no longer have any communication with my former partner, and thoughts of her seldom crossed my mind. The divorce turned contentious as she believed I was acquiring an excessive share of the finances, despite my willingness to accept less than half in order to facilitate a more seamless process, safeguarding both businesses and retirement plans. It is truly remarkable that she could betray someone and subsequently lament the sum of money being taken, even if it amounts to less than half. This solidified my conviction that I had chosen wisely and that it was imperative to extricate myself from this detrimental circumstance without delay. During the divorce, I found myself losing some friends, yet it doesn't weigh on me. The majority stood with me, and I harbor no worries for those who chose otherwise. Their departure was a simple decision for me to make. The most challenging aspect was the loss of my in-laws, as I truly held affection for some of them. Nonetheless, I grasped their perspective. I reached out to my ex-wife's affair partner's wife with ample correspondence to clarify the situation. Although she chose not to respond, I hold her decision in high regard. For those navigating this harrowing experience, here are some words of guidance. Detach yourself from the circumstances to gain clarity and avoid manipulation. Consider seeking guidance from a professional, lean on the support of friends and family, and commit to making healthy choices. Stay active, moderate your substance use, and place a strong emphasis on self-care. Heed the counsel of others, yet in the end, trust your own judgment, for this journey belongs to you alone. In the wake of the affair's revelation, I found myself engulfed in a profound darkness. Yet as the heartache began to fade, I discovered that this chapter has blossomed into the most extraordinary time of my life. Each day, I discover authentic joy. If you find yourself in a comparable predicament and seek guidance from someone who has navigated these waters, do not hesitate to get in touch. I am at your service. That was quite an enjoyable tale. Now let us transition to yet another thrilling topic. Prepare yourself, for we are about to embark on the journey of Story 2. About a month ago, I came to the painful realization that both of my children were the product of my soon-to-be ex-wife's infidelities. For some time, I had been nurturing a quiet doubt that neither of them truly belonged to me by blood. 6 years ago, with the arrival of my son, a profound joy enveloped my heart. I had united with my closest companion, We welcomed a child into our lives and all appeared to be idyllic. Yet as the years passed, I found myself grappling with uncertainties regarding his lineage. He bore no resemblance to me, and as he continued to grow, it became increasingly clear that his appearance diverged significantly from my expectations of what my child would look like. I was determined not to allow superficial impressions to fuel my doubts, for I am neither trivial nor overly suspicious. My wife's actions set off a series of warning signals. Each time she ventured out, her location seemed to contradict her assertions. She possessed mysterious voids in her calendar, declined to permit me any engagement with her colleagues, and a dear companion of hers charged her with having an inappropriate flirtation with their partner during that period. The web of deceit she had woven began to unravel, particularly in the wake of our son's arrival. Yet in spite of her duplicitous essence, my heart remained steadfast in love. She, as absurd as it may seem, each time one of her deceptions came to light, she would profess her affection for me with unwavering certainty. She had succeeded in persuading me that, in spite of her deceit and cunning, she was not an unfaithful woman. In the previous year, she found herself expecting once more, and I held on to a flicker of hope that the child could possibly be mine. Yet upon the arrival of our daughter, it became clear that she embodied a rich tapestry of ethnicities. I chose not to sign the birth certificate. The paternity test I subsequently requested validated my long-held suspicions. Neither of them bore any biological connection to me. On the day I received those test results, I took the decisive step of filing for divorce from my unfaithful partner and turned my back on the family I had painstakingly constructed. I realized that my departure would fracture her son's world as he watched me walk away. In spite of my fears, I had devoted myself fully to being the father he needed, channeling all my love and energy into fulfilling that role. Yet in his presence now, I find myself engulfed by a wave of revulsion. I find myself overwhelmed by a deep sense of disgust towards my unfaithful wife, a profound disappointment in my own inability to trust my instincts, and a haunting realization that the past 6 years of my life have led to a void of meaning. Many have branded me a monster for abandoning my son in such a way. Since my departure, my ex has persistently sought to sway me towards reconciliation, wielding himself as a tool of negotiation. In the stillness of the night, she compels him to reach out to me, his voice trembling with tears as he begs for his father to come back. As I gathered my things to leave, she strode into the room with him in tow, showcasing the turmoil my departure was inflicting. Whether in the digital realm or the physical world, each mention of him brings forth waves of criticism and condemnation directed at me. Though our bloodlines do not intertwine, I stand as his father. It is with a sense of melancholy that I have come to understand that, for the majority, my emotions carry little weight. Throughout this ordeal, my parents stand as my only supporters, while my siblings cast me as a reprehensible figure for having left a child in such a manner. My feelings of betrayal and sorrow are overlooked simply because a child is in the picture. I recognize that he is not to blame. I understand that the man he referred to as his father throughout his life has simply walked away, yet I find myself questioning why I am expected to rise to the occasion. Why must I feign that all is well and stifle my disdain for this entire predicament? What compels me to put my own life and feelings on hold? I was never really the boy's father, yet my love for him has always been genuine and remains so to this day. Yet I would find myself filled with resentment and disdain for him if I were compelled to persist in that role. I would detest myself for failing to rise and take back my own existence. He is not my child, and while it is not his fault, he is no longer within my realm of responsibility. It seems that divulging my personal struggles has yielded some results. However, I have observed several recurring inquiries, and I shall take the opportunity to address them here. 1. Her son knows the reality that lies beneath my leaving. I engage in a dialogue with him, clarifying that I am not his biological father and that his mother had misled me and acted unfaithfully. I expressed unequivocally that I hold no resentment towards him, that he is not to blame for this predicament, and that my regard for him remains steadfast. 2. There are whispers that I never genuinely cared for him, that perhaps I was perpetually seeking an escape. Conveying emotions in a text post such as this can be quite difficult, particularly when the weight of strong animosity towards an unfaithful spouse looms large. You are at liberty to cultivate your own perspectives. 3. I am currently represented by legal counsel, and I will not be required to fulfill any obligations regarding child support or alimony. Ultimately, for those proposing that I should stay involved in her son's life and maintain my role as his father, that simply isn't a practical option. I harbor no ill will towards him. However, I have been misled, deceived, and taken advantage of by a self-serving and duplicitous person who has now ensnared her children in her intricate tapestry of falsehoods. He stands as an unwitting casualty of her choices, carrying no fault of his own. Yet it does not alter the stark truth we face. I do not harbor any hatred towards him. A deep sorrow envelops me as I reflect on his circumstances. Yet as I gaze upon him, what unfolds before me is a tapestry woven with 6 years of deceit, 6 years of exploitation, and 6 enduring years filled with a crescendo of doubts and frustrations stemming from a woman who manipulated my trust. Setting aside my resentment to engage in his life feels impossible, for the existence I shared with him was merely a facade, meticulously constructed by his mother. This is the stark truth I must confront, and I cannot, with a clear conscience, expose myself or him to any further suffering. I've observed a plethora of armchair lawyers in the comments asserting that this post is fabricated based on the reasons I outlined previously. I shall refrain from revealing my present location. However, I am presently engaged in the legal endeavor of contesting paternity, a process referred to as the disestablishment of paternity. This may not quiet the vast majority of you who believe that Google transforms you into legal authorities, but I can at least say I've made an effort. Revise. This shall be my last revision before I bid farewell to this small diversion I crafted for my own amusement. To begin with, I wish to convey my heartfelt appreciation to all for your thoughtful messages, be it in the comments, direct messages, or our conversations. Your presence has brought a light to my day, a rarity that I haven't experienced in some time. I long to reply to each of you, yet words alone cannot express my gratitude. Moreover, I have observed a considerable number of individuals passionately condemning the language I chose to depict my soon-to-be ex. I wish to express that I find myself in one of the most challenging phases of my existence. All I experience is a profound rage directed at the woman who has shattered my existence. Was the language I employed unsuitable? Does the term I selected to portray her carry a degrading or offensive connotation? Indeed, I shall concede that. Yet I shall not express remorse for it. The words I've penned today capture the stark truth of my current situation. It is a raw and unrestrained expression of feelings from an imperfect individual. My intention is not to foster animosity towards women or to communicate a message that portrays women in a negative light. This is not my intention, nor is it the essence of this post. I recognize the concerns surrounding the word I chose, and I acknowledge that this feedback is a legitimate critique of my behavior today. Today, I arrive seeking a refuge for the turmoil I find myself in, a space to express my thoughts, to mourn, and to navigate the intricate and overwhelming feelings that have enveloped me over the last month. A sanctuary where I can articulate my mind without restraint. Do you realize something? Today, I reached that milestone. It turned out to be unexpectedly delightful, and I owe it all to each of you. Once upon a time, we found ourselves intertwined in a narrative that unfolded when we were both 22, just after our college days. At first, I played the role of a friend, but everything changed when I mustered the courage to ask her out after we found ourselves working in the same city. For 9 months, we shared a connection that led me to believe she was my destined partner. Yet she abruptly withdrew, leaving no clear explanation in her wake. At that time, she had no desire for anything serious, her mind set on the pursuit of a master's degree in the USA. Conversely, my desire for a serious relationship was perceived by her as a sign of neediness, and she believed I ought to feel thankful for the chance she offered. She enjoyed a certain popularity in college, radiating an allure that often left me feeling insecure. At that time, I was diligently working on my own confidence, convinced that I was on the path to becoming a desirable partner. Our connection endured thanks to mutual friends. During the years spanning from 23 to 27, I noted that she engaged in relationships with a number of different men. At the age of 27 to 28, I learned that her parents had tried to arrange a marriage for her, yet none of those potential matches came to fruition. In due course, she made the first move, and as fate would have it, our connection blossomed into a romance. At the outset, she inquired whether I was in pursuit of a serious relationship, to which I responded that I had never engaged in dating without earnest intentions. Nonetheless, I conveyed that I wasn't rushing into marriage and proposed that if she sensed any pressure from her parents or other influences to tie the knot swiftly, she ought to consider alternative paths. Our 6 months together were, truthfully, among the most remarkable months of my life. Our experiences in bed were nothing short of fantastic, with her being incredibly accommodating and sweet. She introduced the subject of marriage, yet I conveyed that I wasn't prepared for such a commitment. A number of our friends had experienced the trials of divorce, instilling in me a sense of caution. I sought assurance before embarking on such a significant journey. She charged me with deceit regarding my intentions, yet I presented her with messages that confirmed my commitment to a serious relationship, albeit one that I was not prepared to rush into. She contended that, in total, we had been in a relationship for more than a year, and that she was keen to establish a more permanent commitment. Following this exchange, a palpable distance began to grow between us. Even with the tender good-night messages I sent her, there were times when she barely acknowledged them, and her enthusiasm for meetings seemed almost non-existent. A month slipped by, and then she confronted me with an ultimatum: either marry her or let go. She asserted that finding another suitor would be a breeze for her, and that I was indeed lucky to have her in my life. This circumstance has been excruciating for me, echoing memories of bygone trials. I see myself as someone who embodies humility, yet I can't help but acknowledge that I've grown into quite the appealing prospect. Though I held a deep affection for her, I firmly expressed that I would not succumb to the pressures of marriage, leading us to the decision to part ways. Following the passage of another month, she reached out to me once more, and we reignited the spark of our relationship. 3 months have passed, and she has once again embraced her delightful nature. She acknowledged her mistake in asserting that she could effortlessly find another, declaring that I am indeed the one for her. She conveyed her longing for marriage whenever I feel prepared, highlighting that her parents are pressing her to tie the knot, yet she is open to allowing me the time I need. At this moment, the notion of marriage weighs heavily on my mind, and I find myself troubled by her sudden shifts from warmth to distance. Is her sweetness merely a tactic to win my hand in marriage? Though I hold affection for her, an unsettling thought lingers in my mind that this may not endure over time, and it appears that the notion of marriage is evolving into something more obligatory than organic. In the wake of my initial message, the insightful responses from others illuminated a truth I had been reluctant to confront. It was time to end the relationship. This clarity, perhaps, was something I should have discovered on my own, without the need for public reflection. Last Saturday unfolded in a whirlwind of chaos, and I find myself truly thankful for the guidance I was given. I made the decision to part ways with her, and in hindsight, it feels like the clear and right choice. In the morning, I reached out to her, articulating my struggle with the sudden transitions from warmth to an unsettling chill. I expressed to her that it would be wise for her to seek someone whose timeline resonates with hers, as I felt no desire to be rushed into marriage. I conveyed my feelings of pain when she held the belief that she was superior to me and beyond my reach. I seek a companion who regards me as their equal. I expressed my desire to conclude our relationship amicably and extended my best wishes to her. Her reply was one of fury. She charged me with a lack of love, honing in on my vulnerabilities, which I choose to keep private, even in the shadows of anonymity. The dialogue escalated, and despite my efforts to soothe her and conclude matters on a friendly note, she remained adamant that I had squandered her time and questioned my masculinity, culminating in a harsh conclusion. She then sends me a message, conveying her wish to conclude matters on a more amicable note. She proposes that she will visit, allowing us the opportunity for a meaningful dialogue regarding our relationship. In her presence, she radiates an allure that surpasses all previous encounters. We choose to engage in a candid dialogue of critique. I recognize her critique regarding my tendency to prioritize work excessively. I conveyed to her how her remark about finding someone better affected me deeply, stressing that such sentiments have no place in any relationship. She acknowledges her error and then envelops me in a cascade of flattering words, declaring that I am the finest man she has ever been with. She inquires if there's any way to mend the situation, and I reply that this bond has reached a point of no return, yet I'm relieved we didn't part on bitter terms. I want to emphasize that my decision to bring this to a close is unwavering. In a surprising turn of events, she attempts to spark an intimate encounter, a notion she had previously dismissed as repulsive. I discover it to be even more pleasurable than our prior encounters of intimacy. In the aftermath, she proposes that I take until the following day to contemplate whether it is genuinely finished, promising to do everything in her power to reconcile. I must declare that this chapter has come to a close. I can no longer engage in a relationship where I find myself resorting to ultimatums in order to attain the respect, love, and compromise I deserve. As tears stream down her face, she confesses that I have always been her destined one, the person she envisions herself with in the end. She discloses that a few of her friends had harbored feelings for me throughout the years, yet she chose to keep it under wraps, all because her desire was for me in the end. In the face of her relentless entreaties that stretched on for more than an hour, I remained resolute, and ultimately she came to terms with the situation and departed. Later, a screenshot arrives from a friend, capturing an Instagram story she shared exclusively with her close circle. Earlier this week, I found myself included in that list, but it seems that is no longer the case. This is a unique compilation in green, designed for sharing content exclusively with a chosen circle of followers. The narrative fundamentally condemns me for squandering her time among various other grievances. I choose to send her one last message before severing all ties. I wish for her to find success and happiness in her journey, and I believe it is time for us to part ways. I sense a newfound freedom and eagerly anticipate meeting a woman who will embrace me with kindness and love me for my true self. Once upon a time, on a seemingly ordinary Wednesday, a new tale began to unfold. After finishing my tasks for the day, I made my way to my girlfriend's home to spend some quality time together following dinner. Our journey together has spanned approximately a year and a half. Upon my arrival at her residence, she shared her intentions to rendezvous with her closest companion. They had aspirations of visiting another girl's abode, a person they had encountered only on a handful of occasions, to indulge in some drinks. I felt a twinge of reluctance at the thought of visiting this other girl's house. Instead, I proposed that we linger at her best friend's place for a while before making our way back home, especially since I had work awaiting me in the morning. Moreover, I take greater pleasure in spending time with her best friend's boyfriend while they engage in their activities. We arrived at her best friend's home, where I was meant to collect her for our journey to the other girl's residence. Upon our arrival, she proposed that we take up residence at her best friend's home, aligning with my initial suggestion. It seemed utterly perfect, and we lingered there for roughly an hour. I found myself sharing a beer with her boyfriend, a gesture he extended, and I graciously accepted out of courtesy. Typically, I make an effort to refrain from drinking or engaging in any activities during the week, and if it were solely my decision, I would find myself nestled in bed by 11 p.m. Weekends take on a new narrative when I'm free from work. In any case, the girl began indulging in vodka shots, and we found ourselves becoming increasingly inebriated. At this juncture, her companion expressed a desire to depart and venture elsewhere. I proposed that the hour was growing late, and that I wished to make my way home shortly. Thus we ought to proceed. Remain where you are. She refrained from arguing, yet this notion took root in my girlfriend's mind, and now she was resolute in her desire to venture elsewhere. She reached out to the girl whose home we were meant to visit, informing her of our impending arrival. At first I protested, insisting that we should refrain from going and that I needed to retire for the night. The clock approached the hour of 11 in the evening. By that time. Yet my girlfriend's insistence led me to make a regrettable compromise. I conceded, agreeing to go, but only until the clock strikes 12, at which point we shall take our leave. We arrived at the location, and it matched my expectations perfectly. A dilapidated, chaotic apartment devoid of seating, filled with an assortment of individuals I would prefer to distance myself from. The clock approached 11:30, and I resolved to endure just a little longer, convinced that the end was within reach. The girls immersed themselves in their own world, mingling with other girls and savoring their drinks. They ultimately polished off a bottle of vodka, and the girls were becoming increasingly inebriated. As the clock struck 12, I made my way to fetch my girlfriend, gently informing her that it was time to depart. Yet she seemed to dismiss my presence entirely, engrossed in her activities, reminiscent of a child reluctant to part from the playground. I found myself repeatedly urging her, every few minutes, with phrases like, "It's time to go," "Let's go," yet my efforts yielded no success. Here I find myself attempting to usher these two inebriated young women out of this establishment so that I may finally make my way home. It is at that moment that events begin to unfold in an unexpected manner. It's unclear how it all started, but in an instant, my girlfriend, her friend, and two other girls slipped into the bedroom, shutting the door behind them. I caught a snippet of their conversation that hinted at a foursome. I find myself positioned just outside the door, surrounded by a few others, each of us lost in contemplation, pondering the curious events unfolding within that room. I hesitated to intrude upon the room in pursuit of my girlfriend, mindful that this was not my domain and uncertain of the activities unfolding within those walls among the girls. I reached out to my girlfriend, yet silence lingered in the air. As moments slipped by, the sound of their voices drifted through the walls, a reassuring murmur that eased my worries for the time being. At a certain moment, one of the girls emerges from the room, and I make my way toward the door. I enter and find my girlfriend, sharing my unease about the unfolding situation. This took the other two girls by surprise and abruptly concluded what was thought to be a foursome. I gently remind my girlfriend once more, "Let's go." She nods in agreement and requests that I step out of the room, allowing her and her friend to get dressed before we head out. I linger for a few minutes, yet they remain absent. I approach the door, turn the handle, and there she lies, nestled beneath the covers on this unkempt bed, accepting the tender care from her closest companion. I enter remarking, "That's disgusting. What on earth are you doing?" Naturally, they come to an abrupt halt, and at this moment I find myself quaking with disbelief. I inform her of my departure, slip on my shoes, and find myself engulfed in uncertainty about my next steps. Ultimately, I come to the conclusion that, well, I'll just take these inebriated fools back to their place. Thus, I make my way back and instruct them to collect their belongings so we may depart from this peculiar location. Her friend offers an apology, leaving me momentarily speechless. I choose to stay quiet as I drop off her friend before finally taking my girlfriend home. Upon our return home, I attempt to engage my girlfriend in conversation for a while. Yet it feels nearly futile, as she is quite inebriated at this stage. Yet she comes to the unsettling realization that she has erred in her actions. At first, she attempts to justify her actions, asserting that I failed to provide her with sufficient attention and do not participate in a certain pastime that brings her joy. After a brief exchange of words, I believe I succeeded in conveying a few of my thoughts, and then we retire for the night. The following day, I lay it all out for her. She and her friend assumed I would be fine with it simply because they are both girls. She noted that it was her friend who took the first step, and she merely followed, finding the whole situation quite peculiar. I convey my feelings of distress, expressing that it seems as though she has betrayed my trust. Even though I might feel more troubled if it were another man, it still leaves me with an uneasy feeling. At this moment, a heavy sense of guilt weighs upon her heart. After work, an air of awkwardness lingers between us, and she seems to be behaving in a manner that is quite unlike her usual self. I find myself grappling with uncertainty regarding how to navigate this situation. I recognize that it is deemed cheating, irrespective of whether the involvement is with a male or a female. It dawned on me that had I not stepped into that room, I may have remained oblivious to this revelation. I expressed to my girlfriend that while I comprehend her perspective, believing it might be acceptable due to the involvement of another girl, I find myself feeling quite uncomfortable with the situation. I expressed unequivocally that should a similar situation arise, I would terminate the relationship. Do you believe I might be extending my forgiveness too far in this circumstance?